Israel versus Palestine. Is the ICC adding fuel to the fire? Recently, the International Criminal Court, ICC, issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The court said it found reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu bears criminal responsibility for alleged war crimes. The court also called for the arrest of Hamas official Mohammed Daif. Netanyahu's office describes the ICC arrest warrants as absurd and anti-Semitic. Netanyahu's response to ICC's issued arrest warrant is quite touching, eye-opening and worrisome. In his own reaction, the U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has stated he is preparing to propose sanctions against the International Criminal Court, ICC, and its officials, following their issuance of arrest warrants today for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant. In addition, he says that he will also propose legislation which would see sanctions levied against any state or nation that attempts to abide by the ICC arrest warrants. The question now is the ICC adding fuel to the fire in settling the dispute between Israel and Palestine? What is your opinion or take on the matter?
This is a very significant escalation for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. No Israeli government official has ever faced an arrest warrant from the ICC before, and the charges, war crimes, crimes against humanity, are of the most serious nature. The ICC saying they have reasonable grounds to believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu bears criminal responsibility for war crimes, including starvation as a method of warfare, crimes against humanity of murder, persecution and other inhumane acts. Now, when the ICC back in May first proposed requesting arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his then Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the Israeli government, the Prime Minister, his office, pushed back, saying that these accusations were absurd, they were false, they were a distortion of reality. 124 countries are signatories to the Rome Statute, which means those countries will be obliged now, if Prime Minister Netanyahu sets foot there, to arrest him and turn him over to the ICC to face those charges.
The anti-Semitic decision of the International Court in The Hague is a modern Dreyfus trial, and it will end the same way. 130 years ago, the French Jewish officer Alfred Dreyfus was falsely accused of treason by a biased French court. In response to these false accusations, the great French writer Émile Zola wrote his monumental essay, J'accuse. He accused the French court of anti-Semitic lies against an innocent officer who was later exonerated of all guilt. Now an international court in The Hague, also headed by a French judge, is repeating this outrageous offense. It is falsely accusing me, the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and Israel's former Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, of deliberately targeting civilians. This when we do everything in our power to avoid civilian casualties. We issue millions of text messages, phone calls, leaflets to the citizens of Gaza to get them out of harm's way, while the Hamas terrorists do everything in their power to keep them in harm's way, including shooting them, using them as human shields. The court in The Hague accuses us of a deliberate policy of starvation. This when we've supplied Gaza with 700,000 tons of food to feed the people of Gaza. That's 3,200 calories for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. And these supplies are routinely looted by Hamas terrorists who deprive their people of much-needed food. Yet just in the last few weeks, Israel facilitated the vaccination of 97% of the people of Gaza against polio. This doesn't prevent the court of accusing us of genocide. What in God's name are they talking about in The Hague? The truth is simple. No war is more just than the war that Israel has been waging in Gaza after Hamas attacked us unprovoked, launching the worst massacre against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. The decision to issue an arrest warrant against me, the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and our former Defense Minister, was made by a rogue prosecutor who's trying to extricate himself from sexual harassment charges, and by biased judges who are motivated by anti-Semitic sentiments against the one and only Jewish state. These judges did nothing. They did nothing against the real war crimes committed against the millions who've been murdered or uprooted by the dictatorships in Iran, Syria, and Yemen. Instead, they falsely accused the one democracy in the Middle East, Israel, thereby imperiling the right of all democracies to defend themselves against murderous terrorists and tyrants. Nor did the court do anything against the Hamas terrorists who raped our women, beheaded our men, burned babies alive in front of their parents, and kidnapped hundreds of men, women, and children to the underground dungeons of Gaza. They're still holding 101 hostages, citizens of many lands, including the United States. Come to think of it, the court did issue one arrest warrant against Hamas. Now hear this. They issued an arrest warrant against the corpse of the Hamas arch-terrorist Mohammed Dev. His corpse. What an absurdity. No biased anti-Israel decision in The Hague will prevent the state of Israel from defending its citizens. And I want to thank our many friends around the world, especially those in the United States, who've condemned this outrage and who have said that this decision will have severe consequences for the ICC and those who cooperate with its decision. Israel will not recognize the validity of this decision. We will continue to do everything we must do to defend our citizens and defend our state against Iran's axis of terror, Iran and its terrorist proxies, which include Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others. Our enemies are your enemies, and our victory will be your victory, the victory of civilization over barbarism and tyranny.
Going to be introducing legislation soon telling any country that aids and abets the ICC's actions against Israel, you can expect a firm response from the United States. There's legislation sitting in the Senate that was passed by the House to sanction the ICC, I think appropriately. 43 Democrats voted for it. We cannot get it to move forward. So I'm urging Senator Schumer to bring that bipartisan legislation to the floor of the Senate, and let's vote on it now. I promise you, if it's not done now, Senator Thune, as new majority leader, will bring that up. But I will not let this go. I've never been more worried about our people than I am right now. What they're doing against Israel reeks of politics, and the system at the ICC is corrupt at its core. How in the world can you legitimize the work product of somebody you believe needs to be investigated before the investigation's done? How can you proceed against a nation who's willing to talk to you before you hear their side of the story? So I will not let this go. To my Democratic colleagues, you've been great. You've been helpful. Senator Blumenthal wants to work with me. Whether you like Bibi or not, this is not about Bibi. It is about some sense of rule of law that will eventually benefit our nation, because if they get away with it with Israel, we are next. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.